This is episode 12 of the Untwisting the Truth podcast. My name is Chris Woodward. I'd like to review a short segment on GB News, which I believe was aired this past weekend. The YouTube video is titled, where this segment is part of it, is titled, Would You Fight for Your Country? And it was all about just talking around the idea of national service and whether we should bring it back. And the segment started with a clip from Patrick Christie, one of their other presenters, where he stated that all the youngsters today wouldn't fight for their country, they're too woke and all that sort of thing. And then they interviewed Jonathan Riley, who was a former army officer and military historian, about the history of national service. And he stated that we had to have it in the war days during the First and the Second World War. And when he was asked whether he thought it was a good idea, I found this struck me, this answer. He said, well, in principle, why should people not do something for their country? Why not? But he's argued that practically it'd be very difficult because of the costs involved in training a soldier in the modern age with the equipment and technology they use these days. And then after that, they had a few other panelists, and they all kind of aired the same thing. They said, well, it might help with discipline and pride and even health and fitness and all that sort of thing. So why not? Why not do it? And this really gets to me, the idea of why not put a rule in place? Why not force people to do something that they don't want to do when no one actually needs it? And it was one of those podcasts where I was really eager I really wish I could be on the panel and aired my views, because no one ever expresses my concerns about this. And this idea, this thought about bringing back national service has been in the public consciousness for some time. And occasionally someone will come on the TV and argue it. And whilst it's never been something that's ever been formally considered, as far as I can see, nevertheless, no one bothers to oppose the idea. No one opposes it and opposes it from a libertarian and human rights perspective, but they should do. And that's why I'm opposing it in this podcast right now. And here is my problem with national service. Well, number one, it is a violation of human rights, because if you're talking military service, civil service obviously a little different on this point, but if you're talking about military service, you are forcing young men and quite possibly young women these days who've got the whole of their adult lives ahead of them to go and train to go on the battlefield and be forced to be placed in a dangerous situation, to be forced onto the battlefield where there's going to be bombs and bullets flying about, and they may lose their lives, or if they don't lose their lives, they could still get seriously injured and face life-threatening injuries, all because they were forced to go out into danger. Now, obviously, there are some people who unfortunately will die young or be injured young. It's possible that any one of us could cross the road and get run over by a mad driver, or or even have someone, a lone gunman firing guns and get shot. It's extremely unlikely for the vast majority of us, but obviously there's the off chance that would happen. But obviously we all leave our houses knowing that there's that very, very minute risk of danger. But that is entirely different from you being forced into a dangerous situation, that forced by the state into danger, and you had no way of avoiding it without being penalised in some way. And that is a violation of human rights. That is a violation of Article 1 of the Human Rights Act, the right to life, the most fundamental human rights. My second problem with national service is that whilst it is a violation of human rights. It is a violation of personal liberties. It is still not necessary for society to function. And what I found striking about that podcast is the reasons for supporting national service stated had nothing to do with defence or nothing to do with the military needing more manpower or not having enough resources. I thought it was bizarre that Jonathan Riley stated that in principle he'd support it, but it wouldn't be very practical. And I'd have thought someone supporting national service would think the opposite, that they would support it because they believed it was necessary for the army to have manpower, but they wouldn't support it, the principle of it. I mean, in principle, I would have thought most of us would think we wouldn't want to need an army at all, because in principle, none of us like wars, do we? But they supposedly are a necessity, even though all the wars we know have been funded by the Rothschilds, the international banking cartel. So they're not just happening organically as we're told to believe. But that's odd that the reasoning for wanting national service was not about manpower, but about installing pride, discipline, and all that kind of thing. Where was I on the second point? Yes, it's a violation of the right to life, and it's also not necessary. Who benefits? If I'm an 18-year-old or a 20-year-old being drafted into the army, being forced from the comfort of my home into army barracks with a bunch of guys I don't know, into doing all this physical training that I'm not suited to, and then being sent off to war, then try telling me that this is good for society because I'm not feeling the benefits of it. How do I, as a conscript, feel the benefits of the so-called greater good? That's the argument for it. When it installs pride, discipline, deals with the obs on the street, all that kind of stuff. It's for the greater good of society. Well, if it's for the greater good, then I, as an individual, must be able to feel the benefit in some way. And even if I'm not a conscript, I'm someone who's older, who's not going to be drafted in. How do I feel the benefit of the greater good? How does having young people conscripted make my life better in a way that it wouldn't do if there wasn't conscription? And whenever you talk about the greater good, there's no way to measure or quantify it. It's the same with COVID. People were staying home to save lives for the greater good. Yet there's not one individual who can claim that their life was saved because other people stayed home. There's not one individual that can claim that their life was made better because of people staying home, or could feel the benefit of the so-called greater good. But it angers me every time we put rules and restrictions in place for certain individuals that are not necessary, and society can cope perfectly well without them. And that is my second reason to oppose this. My third reason for opposing the national service is it basically is demonising a whole generation. People who say, all these yobs on the street, we need to get them into the army and all that sort of thing. Well, they're demonising every 18, 20-year-old young adult as if they're a yob, as if they're a nuisance, as if they're dealing with. And it's only really a minority. I mean, I know that a large number have been brainwashed and all that sort of thing, and it's not their fault, but if you're supposing that you are not a yob, that you are studious, you're hardworking, you're responsible, you've got ambition and all that sort of thing. If you're one of those, you get demonized, you get lumped in with the people who go out committing crimes and shoplifting and in gangs and all that kind of stuff. It's not fair on those people. It lumps the good people in with the bad guys. And also, it's a one-size-fits-all. And I know from personal experience the harms done by one-size-fits-all, because not everybody is naturally suited to military life. Not everybody has. I mean, most people, if they are able to get fit in some way, are able to improve their fitness, but not everybody is suited to that kind of work in terms of the teamwork ethics, the types of work involved. So, I mean, there's guys that do well in the military, often the people who don't do well academically, and those who are suited to the adrenaline of it and all that sort of thing. But not everyone is. People who may decide they want to be lawyers or doctors or engineers or whatever, they're not the army types, but they're expected to fit in with this environment because supposedly it's for the greater good of society, because it's a way of dealing with the yobs. That is the other problem. It's a one-size-fits-all. And some of us know what it is like to be placed in a one-size-fits-all and not fit in. My fourth reason, and I could go on and on and on with many reasons, so I'm just trying to make this as systematic as I can, is that, and this is what struck me about the podcast, the reasons these guys wanted the national service on this segment of GB News was nothing to do with, well, we need more military manpower. That it was all about pride in your country and all that kind of stuff. Well, hang on a minute. If you want to sort out the yobs on the street, if you want to install pride and discipline, then find solutions that are designed for that end, because that is not the purpose for the military. The military does not exist to turn boys into men, to install discipline, pride, get people healthy and fit. That is not what the military is there for. It might be a byproduct of some individuals who join the military, that's what happens, but that's not the purpose of the military. And I get very irritated when people give solutions or try to give solutions to problems that are not, and those solutions that they give are not actually designed to deal with that problem, but are only a byproduct. If you believe there is a genuine organic problem with antisocial behaviour or whatever that needs to be solved, then find a solution that is specific to that end, and a solution which does not involve people having to risk their lives. So I could go on and on and on, but I wanted to make this podcast because I am concerned that there's a propaganda campaign to try and get the idea of national service back into the public consciousness. I remember back in 2002, there was a TV series on ITV called Lads Army, where they brought a whole bunch of lads, young men, to do 1950s style conscription. And then the next year they changed it to Bad Lads Army. So they had specifically guys who had criminal records and were complete sort of down and outs and all that sort of thing. And the idea was to try and show it was clearly promoting the idea of it as a positive, and to try and show that maybe this would be a solution. Maybe this would solve all the antisocial behaviour out there. And I remember there was one segment on GMTV during that series where one 21-year-old guy was with his father, and the father had challenged him to do the. He was obviously someone who's a bit of a tearaway and all that sort of thing, but his father had challenged him to go and do the Lads Army TV show, and he went on and did it, and then he was reformed, and then he said, yeah, bring back national service. Well, and the thing is that whilst it's an idea that's been suggested and no one's formally proposed it or come close to doing that, no one ever opposes the idea. Everyone on the media always try to make it out as being a good idea, and no one comes in with a voice and takes a stand against it. And we need to do that every time they are suggesting these sort of things, subconsciously, incrementally, gradually. We need to do it and say no, because it may well be that they're working towards conscription for some form of World War III, that they want to bring it back for something, maybe with this Russia-Ukraine conflict or something like that. And they knew about this a few decades ago, or they had ideas, scenarios being planned, but they needed, in order to get the public to support a form of conscription, they needed to implant the idea of it subconsciously as a positive thing in the people's minds. And I can see they've been doing that for the last 20 years. But it's a very, very bad idea. And I say that primarily because there is, even if you are one of the older generation who might support it, you are unable yourself to feel a specific benefit from it. So I just wanted to give my take on that, give my comments on what I would like to have said on the GB News panel, and oppose any notion of national service, even if it's civil service, as opposed to the military service. Because someone might come back to me and say, well, it's not necessarily joining the army. It could be, you could do civil service or something like that. But hang on a minute. When someone like Jonathan Riley says, well, why not have it? Why not? Good idea. Why not? Well, my answer to you is, why should a young man or woman be forced into joining the military or the civil service as opposed to starting their own business? Why is it more virtuous for you to be working for the state as opposed to doing something like setting up your own business where you will be creating jobs, working towards help supporting the economy, and in that sense you're doing something for your country as well? But why is it more virtuous to be working for the state? Someone needs to challenge that notion. I'm disappointed that no one has done. I posted a comment in the GB News YouTube, on the YouTube comments by that video. The best thing I can ask people to do is to keep posting similar comments when these ideas are sprouted around on Facebook, on YouTube, on all social media. That's the best, although there's a lot of censorship, that's the best platform we've got, I feel. Anyway, I think I've summarised everything I want to say in this podcast. There'll probably be something else that I'll think of once I've turned the recording off. But for now, there'll be another one and maybe I'll mention it then. But for now, thank you for listening and I'll speak to you soon.